Thank you, audience, for your united and blended voices in the singing of our Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. What a way to start off this tribute to honor the memory of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This year's theme, titled, When Will Freedom Ring?, a celebration to continue MLK's dream, was chosen by the 2022 MLK Steering Committee due to the global lack of commitment of our society to properly position all people freely with respect to principles of culture, race, and religion, and other individual differences. Accordingly, this program was positioned to challenge us all to do our part in making certain that we exercise forgiveness and understanding. We should strive to promote the benefits of the freedom that all of us should experience together. I am Miles Twitty, Mr. Kwamka 2021, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the African American Cultural and Resource Center's annual tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As with last year's tribute, this event is being produced virtually due to the efforts of the AACRC and campus community to do its part to respond to the ongoing effects of COVID-19. We thank the campus community for your caring effort to keep our Bearcat community safe, knowledgeable, and united as we transition our way safely back to campus.
Habari Gani. I am Christina White, your Miss Kwamka 2021. Although we can't physically engage with you today, the AACRC did not limit its creativity for today's MLK program. Not only did the program retain its delights, such as the annual Embodiment of Hope Awards, we expanded the program to include not one, but 2 student speeches. And next week, we will continue celebrating Dr. King with an advocacy training that we will discuss later on in the program. So the only thing you'll be missing today is the breakfast that we had planned for you, and we apologize for that. However, I'm sure that once we return to campus, Mr. Watford will be happy to provide us all with a special meal. I'll be sure to put his cell phone number in the chat. But seriously, the steering committee and AACRC staff have worked hard to plan another wonderful MLK experience for you. And on behalf of the AACRC, we appreciate your patience and willingness to join us for today's program. I am so excited to present this segment that will bring us closer to the matter of today's message. I am honored to introduce an active brother in our local community who is making a difference in the lives of young Black males. Mr. Jordan Bankston is the founder of the Black Male Initiative that exists to create a culture of brotherhood among young men of color, while providing dynamic tools and resources that empower them to redefine, reshape, and reimagine the outcome of their lives. The initiative is called Forever Kings. Please welcome Jordan Bankston, who will offer us a universal prayer.
Greetings, I'm Jordan Bankston, and I have the pleasure and honor of being the founder and CEO of a local nonprofit organization, Forever Kings Incorporated. We exist to create a culture of brotherhood among young men of color while providing them with dynamic tools and resources that they need to redefine, reshape, and reimagine the outcomes for their life. Today we get to honor the life and legacy of the great Dr. Martin Luther King. Will you look to the Lord with me for a moment of prayer? God, we thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your love. We thank you for your mercy that is everlasting. I pray, God, that you be in the midst of today's event and that you would get glory. In Jesus' name, amen. I pray that your ceremony is blessed today as we remember the life and the legacy of the great Dr. Martin Luther King.
Thank you, Mr. Bankston, and thank you for your influence on the Black men in our community. Next, I am happy to introduce one who is critical in providing direction and support so that we can experience this and other great programs safely. She leads the Division of Student Affairs and is present for our campus with providing her wisdom, guidance, and support. Please now welcome Mrs. Deborah Merchant, our Vice President of Student Affairs, for welcoming remarks.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Today, in this virtual format, the University of Cincinnati pays homage to the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The theme for this year's celebration, When Will Freedom Ring? A celebration to continue the dream of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The theme was chosen to encourage advocates, leaders, and change makers to reflect on social inequalities that still exist in our communities. The tradition and success of past MLK tributes, as well as the challenges of the past 2 years, positively challenged this year's committee to reimagine a program that is more than a moment or a day of remembrance. The Planning Committee was inspired to continue programming beyond the date of today's program in order to expand the focus on Dr. King's dream. After attending a webinar entitled Re-envisioning MLK Day, the committee dedicated their intentions to introduce more service and leadership development opportunities into the 2022 celebration. Kudos to the Planning Committee for the great work of bringing together program elements designed to sustain forward momentum towards change. The extending programming invites the UC community of student advocates to partake in later opportunities to discuss race and identities and to participate in sessions to learn more about advocacy. In addition, the committee added a service day component and an advocacy training day. The advocacy training day is entitled, When Will Freedom Ring? Social Justice Advocacy Training. This will be held in a virtual format on Tuesday, January 18, 2022 from 11 to 2 p.m. Lastly, this extended program will provide ways students can invest by contributing their own innovative ideas to maintain the rich legacy of Dr. King on our campus. Thank you all of our campus partners and co-sponsors who made this year's programming possible. Since 2019, the program has continued to acknowledge the spirit of Dr. King within our campus community by awarding 2 social justice awards: the Martin Luther King Faculty Staff Award and the Student Embodiment of Hope Awards. The winners are nominated by peers who have witnessed their ability to lead, be a change agent to our community, and have emulated the vision and spirit of Dr. King. I hope this year's tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King inspires you to action that challenges the systems of oppression and works to eradicate inequalities wherever it occurs.
Thank you, VP Merchant. Now please welcome the newest member of the MLK Steering Committee, who will also be serving as one of the presenters in the upcoming advocacy training, Miss Brittany Goodrum from Student Affairs, Leadership and Engagement. Brittany will introduce our first student keynote speaker.
Hi everyone, Roxy Doreen Wilson is a graduating senior from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, double majoring in criminal justice and women's gender and sexuality studies. Coming to UC, she was involved in the transitions program and has served as a base steering committee mentor since her sophomore year. She is also involved in various activities and community service events on and off campus, including co-leading Shades of the Rainbow through the AACRC and LGBTQ+ centers, being the president of the CECH Tribunal in Student Government, as well as serving as a member of the Omicron chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She has also been consistently on the Dean's List and is a part of the University Honors Program and served as Miss Kumka 2020, where she started her company, Developing Divisions, which trains students and faculty on inclusion and racial empathy. She plans to attend law school in the fall and become a practicing lawyer in the field of civil rights litigation, dedicating her life to freedom and justice within our community. Her favorite quote is, "The ones who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do." I couldn't agree more, Akua. Now, without further ado, please help me welcome Ms. Akua Wilson.
What is a dream? Take a second, close your eyes if you want to, and envision your wildest dream. Now, think about what it would take for that dream to become a reality. We often consider a dream to be an idealistic version of reality that satisfies our deepest wants and desires, something unattainable or unrealistic that we do not have access to within our current lives. On August 28, 1963, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. Despite Dr. King giving over 2,000 speeches and sermons in his lifetime, we continue to let the specific parts of this speech be taught as his only legacy. Why? We often cite this speech as an appeal to democracy, often quoting the ways in which the US Constitution and Declaration of Independence have failed to provide the freedom to Black people that they promised, but that's just it. These documents never applied to us because they weren't made for us. We often memorize phrases like, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." We're taught over and over again that there is a limit to our freedom, a threshold, that certain freedoms are too radical or too risky. Yet we forget when Dr. King said that the bill is due. When he said that we have also come to this hallowed spot in America to remind ourselves of the fierce urgency of the now. And Dr. King also told us that 1963 is not the end, but the beginning. This dream that Dr. King preaches over and over and over again is not a dream that is completely of his own. This is the same dream that is that of our ancestors, the same dream that runs through our blood, and the same dream that inspires each of us to keep going every day. Despite what you may think or have been told, we each have a role in that dream. We have a social responsibility to continue the goals and honor the sacrifices of our ancestors who have fought harder than they believed they could, thought smarter than they were told they could, and achieved the things that we could not imagine our lives without today. We have been asking this question, when will freedom ring, since the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade, to the conditional freedom of the Emancipation Proclamation, to the justified racial repercussions of the 13th Amendment. And these are just the legal and blatant forms of discrimination that this government has used to continue to enslave Black people. We can sit here and talk about redlining, the scarcity mindset, tokenism, every other socially accepted form of stripping Black people of their dignity and demonizing our unity. But I know I'd be preaching to the choir. So, how do we honor Dr. King's legacy? That's simple. Remember that wildest dream from the beginning? I'd like you to think about it again. And this time, I want us to consider a few factors. First, that dreams are created and brought to life. Not only are your dreams attainable, but dreams are the blueprints of your goals. We let so many people tell us the limit to our own goals. We create a timeline in which we think will satisfy us when we finally reach it, but these are your dreams. And Dr. King said, the time is now. Now, more than ever, we need to take a risk, a leap toward our dreams, a fight for freedom. But let's also remember the wise words of Fannie Lou Hamer when she says that nobody's free until everybody's free. So while you may have gotten into that school, you may have gotten that position, you may have become the first to do it, it is your responsibility to your community to make sure that you are not the last. To make sure that you are not only dreaming for yourself, but you are honoring the dreams of your ancestors and your future generations. When will freedom ring? Freedom will ring when we demand it. Freedom will ring when we resist, when we unite, and freedom will ring when we follow our wildest dreams.
Thank you, Akua, for those exceptional remarks. We all look forward to seeing your future greatness. And now I'm excited to welcome a special performance from my co-host, Mr. Miles Twitty. Please welcome him as he performs Amazing Grace. Now, let's welcome our next student speaker. Here to introduce him is Mr. Marquez Jones, Program Manager in the Office of Ethnic Programs and Services. Please welcome him now.
Anthony Jerome Stone Jr. is a PhD candidate in the Department of Sociology at the University of Cincinnati. Anthony is a lifetime student of Black leadership, having spent time in various Black male mentoring groups and programs, such as Upper Bound, the King Chavez Parks Program, and MSU's The Advantage with Eric Thomas and DeAndre Carter. He completed his undergraduate education at Michigan State University, receiving a Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science pre-law, and completed a Master's of Arts in Sociology from the University of Memphis. Anthony's scholarship focuses on the relationships between race, culture, identity, and media, and how people make meaning of their lived experiences. His research has examined the ways that Indigenous Americans talk about and shape their identity around racist iconography, such as Cleveland Indians mascot, how the rhetoric of Martin Luther King Jr. during the last years of his life made him the most hated Negro in America as he fought against racism, poverty, and global violence, how Black males understand the role of stereotypes and police violence in their lives, and the various ways race influences people in society. His current projects center the experience of Black males participating in youth sports and as consumers of Black film and media, as well as writing on notable historical figures such as Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., and W.E.B. Du Bois. Anthony has spoken at MSU's Magic Program, Michigan Elite Football Camps, the Young Men's Journey to Excellence Symposium at Hughes High School, on an expert film panel discussing Talking Black in America for the College of Allied Health, for Sports Leadership Roundtable discussing race in sports officiating for the Michigan High School Athletic Association, and for many UC programs, just to name a few. He has published on the racial rhetoric of MLK in the Journal of Communication and Religion. Now, without further ado, Anthony Stone.
Habari Gani. It is such a pleasure to be here to speak with you today as we celebrate King's legacy. And as we celebrate, I'm reminded of some of the lessons that King left with us down in Memphis, Tennessee, as he left this world. It's been almost 53 years since King spoke of climbing to the mountaintop of God to view the promised land. As he foresaw, he did not get to the other side with us. But with what's happening in our country today, I must ask, have we crossed the summit he dreamed of? In April of 1968, as he had in much of 1967 and 68, King proclaimed that something was happening in the world. He saw an uprising around him to combat poverty, to combat state-sanctioned violence, and to combat racism. As I speak with you today, while once again something is happening in our world, I wonder, when will freedom ring? Here in Cincinnati, you can't walk down Vine or Reading without seeing poverty. Though folks sleep under bridges, on park benches, and in the corners of abandoned entryways, gentrification spreads from downtown to OTR all the way to the borders of Avondale, taking up the space that were once the homes of Black people. Now we have froyo, tapas, dog parks. But across this country, violence and racism and violence because of racism still run rampant. Y'all have heard of driving while Black? Well, living while Black in America means that your life is in jeopardy at any moment. Don't dare wear a hoodie. And want a snack? A snack. Don't jog, don't lay in your bed, don't drive your car, don't hustle to make ends meet. Don't live in a dorm. Don't play in the park. Don't be man, woman, trans, or child. 53 years later, and being Black means you have the eyes to see the trouble, but not enough power to fix it. King said, somehow, only when it's dark enough can you see the stars. More than just Black Americans are opening their eyes to the injustices that have plagued this country for centuries. We are once again at the nexus of change, where we must all use our voice, our body, our platforms, and our resources to finally put an end to the inequalities. For too long, we've allowed America to keep us in a valley of denial, as those in power, the media, try to cloak us what has always been right in front of us. Racism, poverty, and violence are real. And 53 years later, it is time to no longer just talk about the dream. 53 years later, it's time that we no longer lie when we say free at last. Today, I beg you to leave the valley. Head up the mountain. Claw your way, but do more than march. 53 years later, I'm asking you to put your money where your mouth is. It isn't enough to protest one summer and stop when people continue to sleep outdoors, when the people continue to starve and die at the hands of state-sanctioned actors. Our protest does not have to look the same, but I beckon you today not just to take a stand, but yell until you're heard. Don't ask, when will freedom ring? Make freedom ring.
Thank you, Brother Stone, for your wise words. And congratulations on your academic achievements here at UC. And now that we've had our amazing student keynote speeches, please welcome Abby Adjei with a musical selection, followed by the AACRC's own Miss Jacqueline Taylor, as she introduces our esteemed keynote speaker.
Every day I must say that I'm grateful for my liberty. In every way may I display that I'm faithful for my legacy. And I'll applaud my liberties. Educate me, and I will teach my history. Please don't judge me, for I can only be what I can be. So I'm standing tall, and I'm standing strong. I can stand for freedom. Every day I must say that I'm grateful every way may I display that I'm faithful to my legacy. I've had struggles and battles, but I fought the fight. I've had heartbreak and sad times, but I feel alright, yeah, yeah. I come through the fire, but I'm not gold yet. But I can say that on this day, I can stand for freedom. That I can stand for freedom.
Vice Mayor Jan-Michele Kearney was appointed to Cincinnati City Council in March of 2020, right at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. She chairs the Neighborhoods Committee and serves on budget and finance, law and public safety, major projects and smart government, and education and growth. Vice Mayor Kearney was born in Cincinnati and is a proud graduate of Cincinnati Public Schools, Rockdale Elementary School, and Walnut Hills High School. She graduated cum laude from Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire. While at Dartmouth, she attended an exchange program at an HBCU, her father's alma mater, Talladega College in Talladega, Alabama. She earned a master's degree in counseling and consulting psychology from Harvard University Graduate School of Education and a Juris Doctorate from Harvard Law School. Vice Mayor Kearney graduated in the same class as her friend, President Barack Obama. She was elected first class marshal of her law school class and gave the commencement speech at graduation. After Harvard Law, Vice Mayor Kearney practiced law with the firm of Taft, Stettinius, and Hollister, then branched out into a solo law career when she helped to start the multimedia publishing company, KGL Media Group Incorporated, DBA Sesh Communications. Sesh owns the award-winning Cincinnati Herald, the Northern Kentucky Herald, the Dayton Defender, Sesh Prime Magazine, and Pix, News and Pictures, and hosts the popular annual Daddy-Daughter Dance, the Bright Awards for 18 through 30-year-olds, and the Nefertiti Awards for Outstanding Women. Vice Mayor Kearney initiated free community workshops in Cincinnati and Dayton in collaboration with other institutions to promote home ownership, owning it, and small business growth, growing it. Vice Mayor Kearney was a co-host for WLWT Channel 5 shows, Issues and Let's Talk Cincinnati. And she is one of the founders of the Greater Cincinnati Association of Black Journalists, which is the local chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists. In 2019, Vice Mayor Kearney co-chaired the National Convention for the National Newspaper Publishers Association, whose members are more than 200 Black-owned newspapers across the country. Her work for the NAACP includes twice chairing the Cincinnati NAACP's Freedom Fund Dinner and working on the media teams for the two recent national NAACP conventions in Cincinnati. She previously served on the Cincinnati NAACP's Legal Redress Committee. An avid community volunteer, Vice Mayor Kearney board memberships now include the Women's City Club and the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Gardens. Vice Mayor Kearney is married to former state senator Eric H. Kearney, Esquire, and they are blessed with two wonderful children. It is with great pleasure that I introduce today's keynote speaker, Vice Mayor Jan-Michele Kearney. Thank you.
Ms. Taylor, thank you so much. Note to self, I need to have a shorter introduction. I really appreciate it. You're wonderful. And I just really thank you. I just want to say, first of all, Habar Ghani to everybody. So excited to be here. I'd like to thank Vice President Deborah Merchant, who's a friend of mine, and also Director Keith Lanzer and the UC Martin Luther King Committee for inviting me. This is really, really an honor. Kudos to all of these wonderful, outstanding students on the program, and also everyone participating. I mean, the music, everything, the speeches have been so impressive. You know, I have to give a special shout out to Jordan Bankston. I just love all the work he's doing with our young men. And, you know, Miles Twitty, you know, I've got to say hi to you because his sister and my daughter are really close friends. And I've known Miles ever since he was in high school, before he became the big superstar that he is now. I loved my soror, Akua Wilson's challenge to take a risk for freedom and honor the dreams of our ancestors. That was so strong. And Anthony Stone, soon to be Dr. Anthony Stone, I love your challenge for us to put our money where our mouth is, to really get out there and be active and to make freedom ring. You guys are so inspirational. So let me just tell you, back in the 1980s, before most of you were even born, I worked here at the University of Cincinnati in the Office of Minority Programs and Services, which now I think, you know, I think Ms. Taylor, I had your job, or maybe you now have my job. And now it's the Office of Ethnic Services. So this was back in the 80s. But my bosses were Bob Meacham, Saul Taylor, and some of you probably know Dr. P. Eric Abercrombie, who was just a phenomenal person. Ms. Taylor, you probably feel now like I did back then. I just loved that job. You know how people go TGIF? It wasn't TGIF for me. I hate it when the weekend came. I just couldn't wait for Monday to get back on campus. We had programs like the Darwin Turner Scholars Program. I know it's a different scholars program now. We had the Black Program Board. Dr. Abercrombie had the Black Man Think Tank, and we did annual HBCU tours. I mean, it was just a fantastic time. I just loved it. Some of the smartest students I've ever met were right here at UC. In fact, I started SESH Communications with someone who was on the Black Program Board, Wilton Blake. And the idea of calling it SESH Communications was his, because as he told us, SESH is an ancient Greek word for scribe. And the first thing we did was to do print publications. So I'm still in touch with a lot of students that I knew way back there in the 80s. And I just remain just really super proud of all of them. I can say it was here at UC that I learned the expression "a luta continua," the struggle continues, because Dr. Abercrombie signed all of his correspondence. He never said sincerely, Dr. Abercrombie. It was always "a luta continua," the struggle continues. And so that really rings true for me all the time as I'm here in City Hall. The question I was given to discuss with you today is, when will freedom ring? And so that question seems to ask, when can we stop struggling? When do we get to just relax? When is this fight over? So if my only assignment today were to answer that question, I would just simply say, not today, and I'd sit down. The late civil rights activist and US Congressman Representative John Lewis, who told us to get into good trouble, said, "Ours is not the struggle of one day, 1 week, or 1 year. Ours is not the struggle of one judicial appointment or presidential term. Ours is the struggle of a lifetime, and maybe even many lifetimes. And each one of us in every generation must do our part." So when Barack Obama was elected president in 2008, believe it or not, Some people said, hey, we have a Black president. Racism is over. We're done. Freedom's ringing. No, wrong. They were so wrong. Racism is systemic. It's interwoven in generations of laws and policies. And even when those laws and policies are outlawed or changed, the vestiges of racism remain. So just to be clear, systemic racism refers to the systems that are in place that create and maintain racial inequality in nearly every facet of life for Black and Brown people. Now, some of you might have already seen this video. It's one of my favorite videos. I'm going to see if I can share my screen. And it's an author, Kimberly Jones, and she explains racism as a monopoly game. She's talking about systemic racism. And so let me see if I can, give me a second. I'm gonna try to be tech savvy here. And I know I can share my screen. Who can share? All participants. Is that right? And I think, I don't see the, I'll ask Lauren White. I don't see where I have to hit the audio, but maybe that's already done
so for
for
400
me.
rounds
Well, here we go.
you don't get to play at all. Not only do you not get to play, you have to play on the behalf of the
See your video as of right now.
play and make money and earn wealth for them, and then you have to turn it over to them. So then for 50 years, you finally get a little bit and you're allowed to play. And every time that they don't like the way that you're playing or that you're catching up or that you're doing something to be self-sufficient, they burn your game. They burn your cards. They burn your monopoly money. And then finally at the release and the onset of that, they allow you to play and they say, okay, now you catch up. Now at this point, the only way you're going to catch up in the game is if the person shares the wealth, correct? But every time you share the wealth, then there's psychological warfare against you to say, oh, you're an equal opportunity hire. So if I played 400 rounds of Monopoly with you and I had to play and give you every dime that I made, and then for 50 years, every time that I played, if you didn't like what I did, you got to burn it like they did in Tulsa and like they did in Rosewood. How can you win? How can you win?
I love that. Was everyone able to see that? I should have asked you before I would go. Can everyone, is that okay? If you guys
couldn't see the video, but we still were able to hear it. And so I think the message still came across.
Oh, you couldn't see it? Oh my goodness. There's always like a tech issue. I don't know what I did wrong.
That is okay.
Yeah, I thought I was sharing my screen, but maybe I wasn't. So, all right. So I probably need to get off of sharing now. Am I off of sharing? Do you see her?
Yes, we only see you. So you currently are not sharing.
Okay, so now I've got to get her off. Okay, hold on guys, here we go. Okay, well, at least you got to hear her. I'm sorry about that. But she's just dynamic. And so I hope you caught the way she was describing, playing Monopoly. Everybody's played Monopoly. And so some people are like, what does that mean, systemic racism? And so that's what she's trying to explain. It's like there's this Monopoly game and you're not allowed to play for hundreds of years. And then suddenly they say, okay, you can play, but you're not, you're starting at the beginning. Everybody's ahead. And so systemic racism, we declared it a public health crisis in Hamilton County and a public health crisis in Cincinnati. It's really imperative to address those systems that create and maintain disparities in every facet of life, in economics, in health, and justice. One example, I'll give a few examples, but one example, the Greater Cincinnati Foundation's Women's Fund did a study of racial disparities and found that 50%, this is huge, 50% of Black women in Cincinnati earn $15 or less per hour. That's half of the Black women in Cincinnati. So the question you have to ask is, now, are their wages low because many of them are in caregiver jobs that are low paying? Or are caregiver jobs low paying because many women, and especially women of color, are in those jobs. So if white males chose those jobs, would the pay rate be higher? Another example of systemic racism, and Akua mentioned this, it's redlining. We have a history of redlining in this country, yes, and that includes Cincinnati. In Cincinnati, home ownership rates are low. Our home ownership rate in Cincinnati is 38%. The national average is something like 64%. For Black folks in Cincinnati, the home ownership rate is about 29%. Starting back in the 1930s, mortgage companies and banks drew on their maps red lines. Someone asked me the other day, what exactly does redlining mean? It's like they literally drew red lines around neighborhoods that they deemed too risky to make loans to. So families from these neighborhoods, and we're talking mainly Black and brown families, could not get loans. They could not get loans to purchase homes. And why does home ownership matter? Home ownership matters because children tend to do better academically when their parents own a home. Owning a home can be life-changing for a family. Home ownership correlates to better health. It allows families to build generational wealth. So redlining, yes, it was outlawed in 1968, but it does continue to exist. And the segregation that it created, that system of segregation, continues to exist. Cincinnati is considered one of the most segregated cities in the country. Some say we're the 5th most segregated city in the country. I've heard that statistic for a long time. I recently read someone said, oh, now we're the 8th. So, okay, maybe we're doing better, all right, but that's still not good. Okay, let me talk about COVID for a minute. Got to talk about COVID. COVID is the reason I'm not with you in person today, and I really hate that because I was just looking forward to seeing everybody in person. But COVID put a light on many economic disparities. Small businesses suffered, especially Black businesses that already were undercapitalized. The University of Santa Cruz estimated that 440,000 Black businesses in the US closed during the first 4 months of COVID. So when the federal government gave out funds, you guys remember back in maybe May or June of 2020, the government gave out CARES Act dollars, and the money was to save businesses at the start of COVID. But many Black businesses were left out. Well, why is that? Well, many of the Black business owners did not have a relationship with the large banks that were distributing the funds, so their applications were denied. In some cases, the small business owner had a criminal record. So rather than returning to the life that got them incarcerated, they started a legitimate business. And isn't that what we want? But when they applied for CARES Act money for their business, they were denied because of their criminal record. So we had a lot of business owners that came to us and said, we can't get CARES Act money because of our criminal record. And so their businesses closed. COVID also highlighted existing health disparities. Black people were twice as likely as white people to die from COVID. Now, this was partly due to underlying conditions such as high blood pressure and diabetes that are more prevalent in Black and brown communities. But we have to look at, why do we have these health disparities in the first place? Black and brown folks live in communities often that are food deserts. There is a paucity of available healthy food and fresh produce, but there's lots of processed food. I was really struck a few months ago when there's a neighborhood where the Family Dollar store closed, and the residents were really upset. And some of them came to me and they said that was the nearest place to buy food. Now, I've never seen any fresh produce at a Family Dollar. So I'm like, this is really, I'm sorry it closed, but this is really, really sad that the place to buy food was at the Family Dollar. I mean, it's all processed food. No offense to Family Dollar, but that is not the place to get healthy food. So economic struggles, food insecurity, housing insecurity, all these factors create stress. Stress, as you know, has a negative effect on the body, a physical effect. And so there are also challenges in having good health care. due to the underrepresentation of people of color in the medical profession. And I want to point out only 4% of US doctors are Black, only 4%. So students, if any of you are in medicine or you're pre-med, please stick with it. We need you. And so there's a lot of mistrust caused because people tend to trust those who look like them, who come from the same place, who can relate to them. Also, we know there's a history of racism in the medical profession. A lot of people still talk about the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. So it's difficult. And we see a lot of mistrust of the COVID vaccine. And that's keeping our vaccination rates lower than they need to be. I encourage people get that vaccine and get the booster. But I definitely understand the hesitancy of a lot of Black and brown people. They're really nervous. I want to encourage them to get it because it's saving lives. But we also have to understand where that mistrust comes from. So while we're talking about systemic racism, let me make a quick note about what I said earlier about the small percentage of Black doctors. It's not an accident. I was at a workshop last year with All in Cincinnati, and All in Cincinnati does equity training. They're part of the Greater Cincinnati Foundation. And in this workshop, they were talking about how decades ago, and I have to go back and find the year, but there used to be 40 medical schools in the United States that train Black doctors, 40 medical schools in the US that train Black doctors. Most of them were closed because there was this fear that, oh no, if we have all these Black doctors, they're going to end up treating white patients, and we don't want that to happen. Now, as a breast cancer survivor, I also have to point out another health disparity. Black women have a lower rate of breast cancer diagnoses than white women, but Black women have a higher mortality rate from breast cancer. The breast cancer death rate for Black women ages 45 to 64 is 60% higher than for white women. Okay, so you're asking me, what are the systemic racism issues about that? Well, there are lots of reasons for that. We talked about healthcare and early detection is really the key. Also, Black women tend to have denser breasts, and so mammograms are not always as effective in catching the cancer early. But as we have now, insurance companies don't want to pay for other diagnostic methods. We have some folks in the State House, Gene Schmidt, who's a Republican, and Cedric Denson, who's a Democrat, are working together, and they're trying to get some legislation passed to force insurance companies to pay for these alternative methods. So there's more to be said about that. Let me say another quick word about a huge crisis in our communities right now, and that's gun violence. Black folks are more than 4 times as likely to die from firearm homicides than whites, and Black Americans account for, this is an awful number, 58% of homicide deaths. Okay, why is that? Well, stats show that counties with higher rates of unemployment or higher rates of poverty have higher rates of gun violence. So we can't just talk about gun violence. We have to talk about the underlying causes. People are struggling, people are suffering, their kids are suffering. We have more young people out here now with guns in their hands and really automatic weapons. And it's crazy. A lot of it is just our communities are suffering. We haven't talked too much, we haven't really talked about the criminal justice system and its history of racism. I'll touch on that just briefly. Black people are 20% more likely than whites to be sentenced to jail time, and those sentenced tend to get sentences that are 20% longer than whites who are convicted of similar crimes. I think it was Dr. Stone who talked about driving while Black, and I think you went on to say living while Black. Driving while Black is really a thing in Cincinnati. The Cincinnati Enquirer did a study about 2 years ago, and we published their study in the Cincinnati Herald. And it showed that Black drivers do have a higher rate of traffic stops and citations. I haven't looked at recent data, but there's an older study that showed that the death penalty correlated with the race of the victim. So killing a white person was more likely to result in the death penalty than killing a Black person. In her video, which you heard but unfortunately didn't see, Kim Jones compared systemic racism to that game of Monopoly, and she asked How can you win? How can you win? How can you win the war against obesity, diabetes, and high blood pressure if you live in a food desert? How can you grow a small business if you don't have access to capital? How can you provide stability, better educational opportunities, and build generational wealth for your family if you're denied home ownership? How can you stay out of the criminal justice system when Black people have a higher chance of being arrested? And we might not win the whole game today, but we have to keep working to make progress. Let me tell you that giving up is a luxury that none of us can afford. As John Lewis said, each one of us in every generation must do our part. So your work, whatever you choose to do, will make it better for your generation and generations to come. And sometimes amid the injustices, there are victories. Derek Chauvin was sentenced to 22.5 years in prison for the murder of George Floyd. The 3 men who killed Ahmaud Arbery were sentenced to life in prison. But then there's Trayvon Martin, there's Breonna Taylor, there's Tamir Rice, Eric Garner, Sandra Bland, Sam DuBose. But even when we lose, we cannot give up. To paraphrase Dr. King, the ultimate measure of a man or woman is not where they stand in moments of comfort and convenience, but where they stand at times of challenge and controversy. And this is such a time. So when wondering if what you do will make a difference, remember these words by Bobby Kennedy. Few of us will bend history itself, but each of us can work to change a small portion of events. It is from numberless, diverse acts of courage and belief that human history is shaped. The message is each of you has the power to make an impact. And I fully expect each one of you to change the world in some way. A luta continua. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor Kearney, for your inspiring message. We appreciate you still accepting our invitation as we change format of today's program to virtual. That only speaks to what our city has always gotten from your leadership examples of doing what must be done to get it done. Audience, please join me in giving Vice Mayor a virtual round of applause. Next, we will have the presentations of our Embodiment of Hope Awards. Please welcome back Mr. Anthony Stone, along with the Undergraduate Retention Program Manager in CECH Student Services Center, Ms. Lauren White.
Habari Gani and good afternoon. My name is Lauren White and I currently serve as the Undergraduate Retention Program Manager at the University of Cincinnati's CECH College. Today I have the distinct honor of awarding the 2022 Faculty and Staff Embodiment of Hope Award. Since 2019, the African American Cultural and Resource Center has celebrated the efforts of UC's faculty and staff by awarding the prestigious MLK Embodiment of Hope Employee Award during our annual Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. The Embodiment of Hope Award acknowledges a faculty and/or staff member who exemplifies the highest caliber of King's spirit while implementing his vision in their daily work. The awardee will be applauded for creating a bridge to peace, harmony, and perseverance within their personal and professional environment. Moreover, the candidate demonstrates a commitment to combating racism, injustice, poverty, violence, and social inequalities. After careful consideration, the program committee awards the 2022 Embodiment of Hope Faculty Staff Award to Dr. Antar Tichavakunda.
Thank you, Lauren. Since 2020, and much like the Faculty and Staff Award, the Student Embodiment of Hope Award acknowledges a student who is learning and performing a service that exemplifies King's vision and goals. Specifically, that student candidate demonstrates through coursework, service, and engagement with the community that they are dedicated to ending inequalities such as racism, sexism, poverty, violence, and religious inequality, all while promoting equality and opportunity for all. In all, they are a student leader in the Bearcat community. This year's Embodiment of Hope awardee is Autumn Francisco. Autumn is a current Master of Social Work student with a passion for mental health, women's health, and social justice. She works as a graduate assistant in the African American Cultural and Resource Center and currently interns at Health Resource Center, where she works as a therapist for vulnerable populations. Her interests surround destigmatizing the Black family as well as reproductive justice. Most of her research is centered around the injustices that women and Black people experience. After graduating from UC for a second time, Autumn plans to work as a therapist to the underserved with an emphasis on prenatal mental health. She also has goals of opening a private practice to serve Black communities. Autumn is active in the community as an abortion doula at Planned Parenthood of Southwest Ohio and is a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She is also the co-founder of Change the Cycle, a nonprofit organization dedicated to ending period poverty or the inequalities that women face relating to their menstrual cycle. Through Autumn's passions, she is always looking for ways to better serve her community in ways that are broader than the traditional and Eurocentric services that we're familiar with. Autumn serves the AACRC, campus and greater Cincinnati communities, her sorority, and Black women families everywhere, all while being a phenomenal single mother. On behalf of the MLK Tribute Committee, the AACRC, and the Black Graduate and Professional Student Association, I applaud and congratulate you on becoming the 2022 Embodiment of Hope Award student winner.
Congratulations to both of our Embodiment of Hope Award recipients. As mentioned earlier, we are happy to present the first ever MLK Advocacy Training Day of Service. And to tell us more about it, please welcome Mr. Keith Lancer, Assistant Director of the Center for Community Engagement.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Keith Lancer, Assistant Director of the Center for Community Engagement. Today, I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about why now is the perfect time to become an advocate in order to strengthen our democracy. On June 14th, 1965, Dr. King gave a commencement address at Oberlin College. In his speech, Dr. King said, "Let nobody give you the impression that the problem of racial injustice will work itself out. Let nobody give you the impression that only time will solve the problem. That is a myth, and it is a myth because time is neutral. It can be used either constructively or destructively. And I'm absolutely convinced that the people of ill will in our nation, the extreme rightists, the forces committed to negative ends, have used time much more effectively than the people of goodwill. It may well be that we will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the vitriolic works and violent actions of the bad people who bomb a church in Birmingham, Alabama, or shoot down a civil rights worker in Selma, but for the appalling silence and indifference of the good people who sit around and say, wait on time. Somewhere, we must come to see that human progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals. Without this hard work, time becomes an ally of the primitive forces of social stagnation. So we must help time and realize that the time is always right to do right. While this speech was made 57 years ago, it is as relevant today as it was then. Today marks 1 year and a week since the historic insurrection at the United States Capitol. For months leading up to the insurrection, President Trump unsuccessfully tried to overturn election results in 6 battleground states through dozens of failed lawsuits, falsely claiming the election was stolen despite no evidence of widespread fraud. Although many Republican legislators indicated they would object to the certification of electoral votes for then President-elect Biden, the campaign lacked the votes needed to overturn the results. On January 6, 2021, thousands of pro-Trump protesters gathered at the National Mall to protest the certification of the 2020 election. At a rally about an hour before the mob invaded the Capitol, President Trump urged rallygoers to go to the building. Hundreds of people broke into the Capitol. Some entered the Senate chamber and faced off with police at the door to the House chamber. At 6 p.m., curfew took effect, and police in riot gear stood outside the Capitol to hold rioters at bay. President Trump tweeted asking rioters to, quote, "stay peaceful," and released a video urging them to go home while referring to a, quote, "fraudulent election that was, quote, stolen from us." Just a few hours later, 147 Republican lawmakers voted to overturn President Trump's election loss, including Cincinnati's Congressman Steve Chabot. Vice President Pence affirmed President-elect Biden's win at the Capitol early the following morning. At least 14 officers were injured during the insurrection, and 2 pipe bombs were also recovered by police, which were located at the DNC and RNC headquarters. 4 people died during the insurrection, a Capitol police officer died the following day, and 4 Capitol police officers died by suicide in the months after the insurrection. This terrible event almost ended the peaceful transition of power in the United States, a central tenet of democracy. Folks, we are dangerously close to democratic collapse, so all of us should be deeply concerned. If you value living in a democracy, you must act now. Now, while fear is contagious, so is hope. So let us not forget, early in the morning of January 6th, another significant historical event occurred. The Associated Press called one of Georgia's 2 Senate runoff races for the Democrat, Raphael Warnock. Warnock, the pastor of Dr. King's Ebenezer Baptist Church, became Georgia's first senator of color. Senator Warnock's Democratic victory was the result of 1.3 million Georgians voting on Election Day, more than 1 million who voted via absentee ballot, and more than 2 million who voted early. This vote total actually broke the state record for a runoff contest. There is light in the darkness. You do have the power to bend the arc of the moral universe toward justice. So if you're interested in learning how to become an advocate for positive social change, consider attending our virtual social justice advocacy training, which is the part 2 of our When Will Freedom Ring celebration to continue Dr. King's dream. This event will be held on January 18th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. via Zoom. At the end of the training, participants will discuss various forms of oppression while learning about the roles we have as advocates in dismantling racism. Please register for this training via Campus Link. The Zoom link for the training can be found in the event description and Campus Link. Thank you for indulging me, and I hope to see you on January 18th at the virtual social justice advocacy training.
We have almost come to the end of another impactful MLK experience, but we have one last piece to this program that I'm sure you will enjoy. U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown was gracious enough to take time from his demanding schedule just to share his memories of Dr. King in our program. This is an added honor and a perfect way to end this celebration. Please welcome Senator Brown.
Hi, I'm Sherrod Brown. It's a privilege to serve as a United States Senator. Years ago, former Alabama Senator Doug Jones began a bipartisan tradition leading an annual reading of Dr. King's letter from the Birmingham jail on the Senate floor. As he was preparing to leave the Senate, I had participated in the reading. He he asked me to take over leading the annual recitation, gathering 3 Republican senators, 3 Democratic senators to read Dr. King's immortal words. As the organizer, I choose to read the section of the letter that includes one of my favorite Dr. King quotes, and one that feels particularly relevant this year. You know the story. A group of, shall we say, moderate white ministers from Alabama thought Dr. King was moving a little too fast. Yeah, we support voting rights, we support civil rights, but not too fast, Dr. King. They told him to slow down, don't demand too much all at once. Dr. King, of course, being who he was and being right, rejected that premise, and he wrote my favorite line in the letter. He wrote, "Human progress never rolls in on wheels of inevitability." Progress never rolls in on wheels of inevitability. It rolls in because we make it so. We organize, we push, we work every angle for as long as it takes. And as Dr. King knew all too well, progress rarely rolls in quickly. A year ago, so many of us were filled with hope. Americans had elected a new president and a new Senate. The first vaccines were on their way. 1 year later, it can be all too easy to get discouraged. The wrongs of the past haven't been righted. There was an attack, of course, a terrorist attack, we know, in the Capitol. A huge number of Americans still believe, because of the former president, still believe that the election was stolen. Righteousness, shall we say, hasn't quite rolled down like a mighty stream. Progress has not been fast or inevitable, but of course it never has been. And because of the work of activists and scientists, of healthcare workers, I hope a few of them are in this watching today who get a little bit of time off work, because of the work of community organizers and ordinary Americans participating in our democracy, we see real change. We got shots in people's arms, money in pockets, workers back on the job. This new COVID variant is exhausting and real, but it's not as devastating as previous ones were because of those vaccines. Businesses are back opening. My grandchildren are back in the Columbus City schools. They're back at school. Businesses are hiring workers. Workers are demanding raises. They're getting them for the first time in decades. Workers are finally starting to get a little bit more power in this economy. Our charge now is to build on that progress, to not lose heart or underestimate what we've accomplished together, and what's more, we can and must achieve. Most important of all, we must protect the vote. The right to vote and to have that vote count is the right that makes all the others possible. It's under assault with the ferocity in the state legislature in Columbus and in Atlanta, in Alabama and Mississippi, and in Harrisburg and Madison. It's under assault with a ferocity we have not seen since Dr. King and John Lewis marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. We see the attacks in Ohio. For years, politicians in our state have been making it harder and harder to vote. And since the last election, it's only gotten worse. It's happened all over the country. New tactics have emerged. These efforts are no longer just about who votes. They're about which votes get counted and who does the counting. We can't allow these politicians and state legislatures to dismantle the democracy that Dr. King and so many others risked their lives to make real for everyone. We can't allow arcane Senate procedure that was used, as you well know, by segregationists to delay and block civil rights bills in Dr. King's era. Those same rules are used now to stand in the way of legislation protecting the vote. We know why the corporate elite in Congress and the lobbyists for some of America's biggest corporations and in legislatures all over the country, we know they don't want everyone to vote, and they don't want every vote to count. They're afraid of progress. They're afraid of anything that challenges their power. We never forget that where was Dr. King martyred? He was martyred in Memphis, fighting for some of the most exploited workers in the country, black sanitation workers in segregated Memphis. He understood the deep connection between worker rights and civil rights. He said, what does it profit a man to be able to eat in an integrated lunch counter if he doesn't have enough money to buy a hamburger and a cup of coffee? Until all workers have the dignity they've earned, Dr. King's work will remain unfinished. That means paying all workers a living wage, giving them power over their schedules, providing good benefits and safety in the job, letting them, if they choose, organize a union. That means all workers get a fair share of the wealth they create. It means recognizing the dignity of work and the dignity of community that Black Americans have built over generations. They were denied wealth and investment. The schools were underfunded. The banks wouldn't lend. They couldn't buy homes. They were redlined. Highways tore through communities, tore down businesses, tore apart neighborhoods. In the face of that, Black Ohioans built businesses and churches and vibrant neighborhoods and loving families. But you shouldn't have to do it on your own. As we emerge from this pandemic, make no mistake, we will emerge. And as we work together to build a stronger country out of this crisis, we can't make the mistakes of the past. We invest in all communities. We ensure every voice is heard in our democracy. That's how we bring us closer to the society that Dr. King envisioned, where all labor has dignity. Thank you so much for your commitment to community.
Thank you, Senator Brown. We are honored to receive your presence. And thank you all for attending today. I look forward to seeing all of my UC family back on campus soon. Don't forget to visit the AACRC's Campus Link page and social media platforms to learn about all of the exciting upcoming programs, such as the Black History Month programs and all of the events that will lead up to the crowning of Mr. and Miss Quamka 2022. There will also be MLK events happening in the city, and some of our UC students and AACRC staff will be participating in them. Shout out to my fellow Bearcats, Shakira Webb, Gerald Crosby, and Abby Ajay. They will perform at Music Hall, and you can view them in all of the city's MLK events by visiting the MLK Coalition website. Though the program portion will be virtual, we encourage students to participate in the march. Come on out, lift your voices, and lead the historic march from Freedom Center to Music Hall. Though there are many ways to give back, connect with the greater Cincinnati community, and honor the legacy of Dr. King, we encourage everyone to be safe, be smart, and be a servant. Finally, don't forget about the advocacy training on January 18th. And now, I will turn the program over to Mr. Eric Watford for final remarks.
I am amazed that, again, at the end of each MLK program, I can smile with gratitude for the amazing support from our campus community. But my first thank you always go to the MLK Steering Committee. Thank you for your commitment to the work, your commitment to professionalism, and thank you for all that you gave to the university, to myself, the support of the program, and especially to the African American Cultural and Resource Center. Since we're not in person, that's still okay. I want people to know how much excellence I was surrounded by. So please wave your hand and look around the screens, and you know these people rock. To our co-sponsors, thank you. We could never do this without you. Thank you for your support. And thank you to our campus partners, and thank you to our division partners. Thank you so much. Thank you to our audience for logging on today, and to our great students who joined us as well. We appreciate you showing up today as well. Thank you for those who participated in our program. Mr. and Miss Kawamka, thank you for hosting, and Mr. Kawamka for your extra duties that you did, the universal prayer, as well as that excellent Amazing Grace trumpet solo. Especially thank you to VP Merchant, who flawlessly leads this division to greater excellence each year. Thank you for your yes and for your ongoing support to the African American Cultural and Resource Center. To Anthony and to Akua, thank you for your student presentations. That's our future, and our future looks good. To the Honorable Senator Brown, thank you for participating. This was a pleasant and welcome surprise. Thank you so much. And to our esteemed keynote speaker, Vice Mayor Jan-Michele Kearney, thank you so much for the yes to our invitation. We appreciate your words of wisdom and inspiration to our campus and to our students. Thank you so much for your leadership that you've already provided in just a short time in your position. And your staff was excellent in communications and working with our office on your behalf. Thank you to them as well. And to our AACRC staff, to Sharia, Jackie, Mercedes, and to Autumn, who who is one of our who was our student embodiment of hope award winner. Thank you all for your support to me as we put this program on. And lastly, I dropped a link to a survey in the chat. So take the time to let us know how we're doing, how we did this year, so we can do it better for you next year. So be safe, be well, and I look forward to seeing you all on campus very, very soon.